Okey dokey. We got the okey dokey. All right, we didn't call the meeting to order with Public Works Building. It's 24th, Monday at 10:30, and we're here to discuss the proposals for the firm for the investigation of the formal complaints that were given on March the 10th. And would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Linderman,
Okey dokey.
Mr. Adams,
Here.
Ms. Hamilton. Here. Mr. Smith,
Okey dokey.
Mayor Wolf.
Here.
Mayor, before we start, I would like to make a motion that we add an item to today's agenda before we start this discussion. To discuss Mr. Truitt's employment contract with the City of Mexico Beach.
All right, the amendments there, if you want to go ahead and vote on that, I would just say that we're here today to discuss the investigation of the formal complaint that was given on March the 10th, which was over 2 weeks ago, when we say we're gonna, based on our handbook that we all agreed on and given to our employees, that we would expedite and do things in a timely manner. I don't call it a timely manner 2 weeks, but with that said, the investigation was put in place on March the 10th. So if there's some other discussion you want to have, Jason, I guess we can go ahead and vote on that and see if that's something, are we making a motion to do that? or-
I'm making a motion, and if you would like a brief explanation of the motion, I will be glad to. We haven't discussed this at this table with everyone here. I knew I was wanting Mr. Linderman to get back, so we could all be here and discuss it. I attempted Friday to put it on the agenda for tomorrow night. I know I was late. Thursday the agenda came out, I couldn't get it amended. Talked to legal, and he explained some things. I'm not here to talk about the HR suits in this. It's the reasoning for it. I felt like that we should have had the discussion about the employment before. That's why I was trying to get it tomorrow. I did not know the special meeting was going to be called when I approached Tammy Friday morning. And then we called the special meeting, and like I said, I advised with the attorney. He said I could bring it up here. I just felt like it was the right time to discuss it. Is that?
Are we, Mr. Sloan, are we okay, we'd have to make a motion to do that?
You have to have a motion, second, and a vote to add it to the agenda, yes.
Before we do that, is there any reason why he couldn't add that into comments or council comments?
Today or tomorrow?
Well, there are no council comments on the agenda.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow? No, sir. He could. My impression was his discussion might have some bearing on the ultimate investigation, whether or not you all go forward and hire an outside firm or not. And so when I discussed it with him on Friday, it was my understanding that he wanted to have this discussion before the council would vote on that issue. So.
And I told Mr. Sloan, just so y'all know, that if the investigation still needs to go on after, however this goes, I don't know the formality of the, if we must still investigate. So, you know, that's, I don't know where that goes after our discussion.
You were wanting to put it on the agenda, that's all we want to vote for is.
Today,
But you want the full discussion.
today. And that's what that was my motion. Unless there's somebody that has a different,
Well,
I just feel like the motion's there. I feel like we should talk about it before we commit. Now, if y'all want to put somebody on standby, you know, after the discussion, so be it.
Well, I think if you're making a motion, go ahead and make that motion, see if you get a second, we'll go ahead and vote on that. But
Yeah.
I guess let's just have a little bit of input first before we get started, is that nobody was prepared to do that, Jason. If we were prepared to do that, I guess it'd probably be, I was not prepared to do that today. I don't have everything I need to have that type of conversation. I don't know how everybody else feels, but that's the reason why we have a council, and that's why we vote, so.
And I understand that that's why I was trying to place it Friday on the agenda for tomorrow. So I am okay with that. I just want to make sure that if we pick somebody today, you know, however the language needs to be, to put them on alert, not to fully engage, until we have the meeting and discuss the employment. Is that?
So you have a motion, and then if there's a second, then you can have a vote on it, Mayor. If there's not a second, then.
I'm trying to talk to the people at the table. If y'all, we are five. If y'all would like to prepare, I'm willing.
I just gave my opinion, everybody got to speak up, but my opinion is that if we were gonna do it, and I had, it was asked me, Jason, was I, as the chair, was I okay with you changing the agenda after it was already published? And I said, no. I said, that's the reason why we have, council comments. If he wants to bring it up during that, we can.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that we have a discussion, I want at the table. I mean, we're talking this now out before we motion. I've said a lot at this table, a lot of facts at the last prior
In
two
your
meetings,
opinion.
in my opinion, at the last two meetings. And Mr. Linderman wasn't here, but I don't feel like y'all have been afforded either the chance I don't think we've discussed it as a table. And I
As
felt
a
like,
table, we haven't.
yes, we
But it's
haven't
been
discussed it as a table.
And I did caution Mr. Adams that he should not discuss anything that potentially is gonna be in the investigation.
Correct.
So,
Would you say your motion again? Your motion is to discuss it, Jason, or?
My motion was to discuss his employment contract today before we move forward with this. We've since just had some conversations at this table, and I understand some of the feelings that, I mean,
I don't think that either one supersedes the other unless you know of some type of deal that if we fire the city administrator,
I don't
goes
know,
away.
I don't know of anything.
No, you don't know of anything?
No, I don't, Mayor.
I'm asking. I mean,
It's gotta come to this table for five of us to do that.
I know we all received an email that said different than that, but
Received an email, said what?
from Mitch Coleman about if we fire the city administrator, this all go away.
I don't take into account what is, I take into account what happens at this table. I don't know, I've asked Mr. Sloan, Friday, or I didn't ask him, I said, I don't know if this goes away or not. I'm not trying to make this go away. If this investigation needs to continue, that's fine.
Well, that's
But
what
we
I'm-
have to discuss this city administrator's employment at some point at this table.
That's what I'm saying, is if we need to have that discussion, we can do that, but we still have to move forward with what our employees have told us that there's a problem.
Yes.
We need to move forward with that investigation. If there's something that needs to add to that, let's go ahead and bring it up and make a motion and do it. But I don't think we should stop this process.
We what now?
I don't think we should stop this process.
Well, that's, if that's the,
well, the complaints, there are some that do not involve the city administrator. So you have other complaints that do need to be investigated, even if you all decide you're not gonna investigate the city administrator complaints.
Correct.
So you need to hire somebody for those at a minimum.
And I second Jason's motion.
Okay.
To get to, and to me, I mean, I know what you're saying, Richard, but you said you wasn't prepared. I mean, what have we heard the last 2 weeks, especially around my neighborhood, in my house, in my phone, in my email. I mean, it's obvious of what's going on, and I think we should get it over with, to me, before we agree with it, but I know we need to do these law firms, HR. But we need to move on. We need to either terminate Mr. Truitt, or we need to keep him. And then I believe it'll fall in place then. And I second Jason's motion.
All right, Tammy, take the roll.
Mr. Linderman,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton,
Can I get clarification on the exact motion you just made?
I made a motion for us to discuss Mr. Truitt's employment contract with the city of Mexico Beach. And this- Before, I did say before, we discussed HR proposals. And now, like I said, we have a second, so I did back a little bit because the mayor said he wasn't prepared. But I felt like I tried to put it on an agenda Friday and it didn't make it. So here I am. At some point, we have to discuss it.
So you're asking for a discussion only of the situation?
Well, we're gonna discuss these things and there may be other motions.
But the current motion is for discussion only. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you want to do that prior to us talking about hiring an HR firm?
I felt like when I discussed it with my legal,
My understanding of what you were asking was to add an agenda item concerning the employment of
Yes.
the city administrator.
yes.
How you term it is what Ms. Hamilton is trying to understand. Is it just a discussion, or is it a full-blown agenda item for,
No, it is an agenda item. I feel like it will be brought up and voted on. Whether he is to keep his employment at the city or to be terminated.
I feel like since the agenda to the public is regarding human resource, possibly consulting with a human resource agency, that's the whole purpose of the meeting this morning. I think that needs to be discussed first, and then your concern. Because that was the purpose of the meeting this morning to begin with, and that's what
Mayor,
the
you're
public
in the
came here
middle of
for.
it.
Yeah, we have a motion, I understand your side, Ms. Hamilton, but we do have a motion, so we have to go ahead and vote on it. And we already had, Tammy, what is the vote so far, where are we at?
Ms. Linda Hamilton.
I'm gonna say no, because I'm not ready to do it at this time. I wanted to go the opposite direction and discuss what the meeting is supposed to be about to begin with.
Understand, Ms. Hamilton. And
All right.
Ms. Linda Hamilton,
I said no.
no, okay. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Wolf.
I'd be a no based on the same thing Ms. Hamilton said.
and again, I caution you all about not discussing things that would be a part of the investigation.
What are those? I don't know what those are.
Have you seen the complaint?
Formal
I've seen the
complaints.
complaints.
Well, the complaints outline what would be investigated against the city administrator.
Okay.
All right, so the agenda's changed, and we're gonna discuss the city administrator. May be of length, so dig in, let's get rolling. Jason, it's your motion, I'd be surprised you're not prepared. You're
just something
prepared?
a little bit.
Okay, let her rip.
As I've discussed in the February 25th meeting and the March 11th meeting, some of the items that have come up during Mr. Truitt's employment here. We've all gotten the emails, everything from, I've said processes of hiring, probably didn't go down, could have went a little different way. We had employees,
Process of hiring, whoa,
process of hiring the public works director.
okay.
So, that was where it was, you know, and I've talked to Mr. Truitt about that several times. We also had the incidents of the lodging.
Can we address them as we, how do you guys want to address them? As he brings something up, do we want to address that to the best of our knowledge, or what we know, or what? What do we want to do? We just want him to tell us all about it.
Well, we should know about it too, Richard. I mean, what he's got, we should.
Hey,
I'm with you 100%, but I'm just saying, the first thing on his list was the hiring of the public works director. He didn't think that went well. Do we?
the process.
That process.
Process.
So we discuss that, or we just go on to the next thing?
See, I think ultimately what you're building the case to have a motion to terminate Mr. Truitt.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm okay with you telling us the reasons you think he should be terminated, and then each council person has their questions or can state.
Yeah, and I would like to hear from the council too about these issues that have been, that's why we're here.
I didn't want to hear that individually, or do you want to hear it after you get done?
However y'all want to address it. You want to address it one by one, or you want to hear the whole thing?
It might, I don't know, it might be easier to address it one by one, so we can remember what was said, I guess.
Sure.
So I guess what I've heard, are you done, Jason?
With that particular,
Number one would be the hiring, the process.
the process of the hiring and the timeline. I brought that up in the February 25th meeting.
What do you mean by the timeline?
Yeah.
We've all gotten the same emails. The timeline that we went from putting the job out there to formally hiring somebody
Okay, and what do you mean by the emails? From who?
from Mr. Truitt.
Okay. So, can I address this?
Yeah, sure, you can get your part, yeah.
So, I guess I would add to that discussion, people have questioned the authority for Mr. Truitt to hire the public works director, and I believe he had full authority to do so based on the charter 31.40 to 31.44 and the HR handbook, pages 8 through 9, where, and I can read that, I brought that, I can read that to you why I think that.
Yes.
Okay, and so let me find that real quick. I did come prepared, no, I'm sorry.
And you're looking at the charter.
I didn't know we were gonna have this, maybe you knew that.
I'm gonna, so when I look at the charter, I don't think it clearly states, let me find it here, sorry.
But if you look at Article 3, it states that the only reason that he could not hire is based on designated the position or the individual's responsibility. That's where the council has to get involved. And I think we had some earlier conversation about that. The city would have to, if he's gonna change his title, it would have to be change of an organization. That's where that would fall in. It has nothing to do with him hiring.
Yeah, so when I look at the 31.40 through 44, I don't see anything in there that says that the council is the only one who can hire. And I don't, it says that the city administrator, subject to control of the city council, shall have charge of all general administration and lists except for the city clerk. The supervision and control, so we'll have direct supervision and control. Where I do think it states, and it has to deal with.
We're in the employee handbook.
On the employee handbook, where I do feel like it first addresses on page 9, where it talks about authority to establish a position. And let me just tell you ahead of time, this may not be well written. I wrote it back when I was working with Doug Baber, and I drafted the employee handbook. And as I recall, the intent was, it says a new position, that doesn't mean a vacant position. And then if we created a new position like we did with the finance director, and possibly, and the same thing if we created a new position called public services or whatever it was, So it says new positions or offices in the city, except those appointed by the city council, together, it goes on, shall have final approval of the City of Mexico Beach Council. So I think in the case like the finance director, we did that, we fired that person, or the council fired that person, and then we hired Mike later, or Chris hired Mike, and that was an example of filling a vacancy of a position that's already been created. Under city administrator duties on the bottom of that page, it says the city administrator, under these personnel policies and when necessary, shall hire as needed, suspend, remove, terminate, discipline any employee of the city unless otherwise provided by the city charter. And so, you didn't exactly bring it up, but I think he had the authority to hire that person. Now, as to the process, the appearance of the process, and I think the perception or the accusation is that he hired a friend of his, and you're accusing him of nepotism or to that degree of nepotism, I believe. I don't think that. Having talked to Mr. Truitt, and after he looked at the applications, I think he hired a person just like I would have probably done, who I knew could do the job. And he was trying to fix things that I know that I had brought up. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I know I had personally brought up, and this was the kind of person he thought could deal with that. Now, and then bringing him in early, I think, is the other concern, 5 weeks prior to the changeover. That has an appearance of wrongdoing, and there's been a question or questions of, did we approve that salary for that time period? And we didn't, and maybe we need to go back and do that, but I will tell you that the difference in pay between what Mr. Steele is getting and what Tommy was getting almost makes up for that. I think there's a few $1,000s difference, and maybe we need to go back and fix that.
That's based on what you have, what's in the budget,
Right.
taking him on at the lower salary. Tommy leaves after 6 months, the next 6 months, Tommy's salary is still there.
So, based on my opinion, because the facts are, he hired him 5 weeks before Tommy leaves, and he hired somebody that he knows with limited public works experience. It's my understanding that Mr. Steele has been both the police chief and the public works director, because they fired their public works director for about a year. So, and I know, I talked to Chris about that, and I okayed that myself. When he told me who he was looking to hire, he didn't just, he asked me what I thought, and I told him I believe that was probably a good pick.
So, just since before
Mhm.
you said, and I talk about the process, I've talked to Mr. Truitt through the month of when he first said that he was looking at hiring Mr. Steele, and I've expressed to him personally, you know, the handling of it directly. So, and I did read the.
That you did not agree with the handling of it
Yes.
correctly?
And I knew at the time, you're right, I'm not saying that he didn't have the authority to,
Okay.
I see that.
I know you're not, Jason. Others.
So I just, you know, when I say the process, obviously we all received an email on 2/5 to chat with Chris. Okay? That was, you know, I can go back and I can use this as a reference, but, you know, 1/24, we got the email that the employee was putting in his resignation. So from 1/24 to 2/5 is a very small window. Okay, and we've all received the email that's in your box about this idea. Almost at then, you could read the email and say that was the hire. So that's the process, and then, you know, if you wanna go, we had 211, we had internal interviews officially and with Mr. Steele. So, it was just, when I talk about the process, and I say that again, I wanna use that, it just, by Monday the 24th, and I said that at our 25th meeting, you know, Mr. Steele was here, employed with the city. And we still had Tommy as a public works director. I understand bringing, you know, maybe a mirroring, but there is some budget stuff we probably should have talked about, you know, as far as the salaries, you know, where was the money coming from, but, so we've talked.
Why would we have to talk about the money if the city administrator had already made that decision and knew the money was in the budget? And then when I had my conversation with him, like he should have had with every council member, that I believe he did, the majority at the table, about this process, that should have been a question asked by the council member or the mayor, is how we're gonna pay for it. And his response to me was, the 6 months that he didn't have to pay Tommy's salary would be there in the budget. It's already in the budget.
The 6 months going forward.
We pay the new person less than we paid the original
I
person.
see where you're going with that.
I see where he's going, but to me, that's taking taxpayer.
And like I said, I'm not getting off on this, that's something that we'll have to talk about. Y'all asked me of the items that I'm concerned about. That's where we started, and Mr. Linderman has spoken on it, if y'all want to continue to.
Could I add one more thing to it? So, I would tell you that particular item, the perception's bad, probably made some mistakes, but I don't think it justifies the termination of Mr. Truitt, that particular item.
It's just one piece.
Yep, I understand.
I'm sorry.
My hiring process was he come to the house and asked me about hiring this man, and I asked him about the experience. He's the police chief. I said, I don't think so. So I called him the next day and asked him, did we hire the man? He said that he had contacted Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf had called Mr. Steele. And then Chris hired him. That's what Chris told me. That was my hiring, my knowledge of the
Yeah.
the man had no experience, nothing, he was police chief and come to take over the public works.
I think just to try to answer your question here, first of all, he did have experience. You just said that he was public works director for a year, covered for a year while he was down in
So
Biscayne.
if you, I talked to Mr.
No, y'all, that's not a public works director, come on now.
Pardon me?
That's not a public works, being a public works director, standing there watching people with a chainsaw. What he told me, now Mr. Steele did. I don't think would make a public works director.
He acted as the public works director for a year, so that's a fact, so.
You know that for a fact. You
Yeah,
can show
that's
it to
what-
me.
That's what he said.
No, I don't want you to tell me, I want you to show it to me.
Well, Jerry, let's say he had no public works experience.
Okay, that's what I-
Let's just say that's the case. What justifies the termination though of Mr. Truitt because of hiring somebody without public works experience? He had the authority to hire him. He did talk to the council to get their opinions, and well, maybe he didn't talk to you, Jason, I don't know. He talked to me, I know he. Jerry-
He did not ask me, did I think this was all right?
Okay, so I stand.
I said that at the February 25th
Sorry,
meeting.
I stand corrected.
But let's
But the
clarify,
point-
he did talk to all the council people about,
I've got, yes, the email says, and then on the February 17th. I mean, if it's another email to all of us.
but he specifically talked to you about hiring Steele as an option.
He said he wanted to bring, would you be able to stop by regarding the resumes received haven't been great. I've been chatting with the mayor and he's developed a plan of approval. It includes bringing in someone I already know as a new public works director. So
Did you go in?
did he tell me?
Did you go in and talk to him?
Yes, I was in his office and I told him, I said, I said, sir, I realize that you can hire who you want. I said in this meeting. And I told him 3 or 4 times, I said, it just doesn't. And now, is this reason for termination? But it's something that needs to be addressed at this table because it's flowing into multiple other things, decisions that he's making for the city, on behalf of the city, that I mean, it's crazy.
Well, you could have said nothing and just hired the guy based on his authority.
I can't, and that's what I've told, if you ask Mr. True, I've sat in his office and said, even the last day on a Friday, the 21st, when he told me, Mark put in his notice at his job, was told he could go ahead and leave, and told me he would be here Monday, 2/24. That was one of the last conversations. I said, Mr. Truitt, obviously,
He made a decision.
we made a decision. So, anyway, it's the process that it just, we had time. The job could have been republished.
Yeah.
There could have been a lot of things done. And it's not about hiring anybody internally. It just went very, very fast. And it turned out to be what it is.
One more thing for me, and Mr. Steele come that morning, went to work, and then after lunch, we went and got a drug test. Should we hire people that way?
I don't know what you're saying.
I don't know.
Check into what you're saying, Jerry.
You gonna check into what I'm saying?
I
She
said I
right
would
in there.
have to check
Oh,
into
I'm
what you're
sorry.
saying.
I saw what you did, like, I want you to show me too. But the man did not go get a drug test till after lunch, and he was already on the payroll. Now, if that's not a little shady, what's going on with the hiring process?
So, I guess I'm trying to understand, so you took a drug test 4 hours later than.
Later than
first-
that, let me say after lunch. Now, I'm gonna put the hours, cause it might be 5.
Okay,
Let's just say, he should have had a drug test before he started to work. Everybody else does.
okay,
And a
He
background
came
check.
down on that day and had the drug test failed, he probably wouldn't be employed.
It don't, that's, to me, that's wrong. You went by this handbook, patting at the handbook, let's go by the handbook. You're supposed to have a drug test and a background check before you go to work with City of Mexico Beach.
I said go by the handbook when I talked about a timely manner, and we haven't done that, so, yeah, I did point out what we haven't done.
okay, but okay. It sounds like what you're saying is correct, Jerry. Would it have made a difference in the drug test? I'm pretty familiar with drug tests, having been in command in the military, and that's, those things, most of those products stay in your bloodstream quite a while. There are a few that, I don't know if they would survive 12 hours, but I take your point.
It wasn't done,
Yeah.
process was not done.
Yeah, okay, I get it, and I think what you're alluding to, Jason, is there's a number of things that all taken together might be justification, not necessarily each one by itself.
You asked me we were gonna discuss it one by one, so I just felt like this kind of started with it, and there was probably before this hiring process, things, little flags, but it really, that's when it kind of took off, but go ahead, anybody else?
Yeah, would the process been okay if he went out and just hired somebody? And not said anything to the council?
Would it
You're
have-
questioning when you got information.
I'm questioning
I
how
don't even-
fast it went. I don't think we should have hired anybody that quick.
Okay.
We had time. It's a public works director, let me get that. Okay, we had time to slow it down a bit. But I guess it wasn't our decision. I get that. I just brought that up, that the process went awful fast, and yes, it's turned out to be a gentleman that he knew from the past employment. Now, is that right or wrong? Maybe Mark is the right person for the job. But putting it together, you have to look at it. I mean, does it not look? I mean, I'm not trying to convince y'all. I just wanted to discuss these things here. I mean, like I said,
I agree, the perception is bad.
It is.
A perception of hiring somebody you know is always tough. That's a tough thing to do, bring in somebody that you know. But have we all done it? I've done it.
quickly, you know. there's
Known
one-
guys from past businesses, I've hired and brought them in instead of going to the outside. I've done that personally.
With no experience,
Pardon me?
with no experience in the job that you gonna hire for?
It's a good question. It all based on what you need
You
to,
answered the question, Rick, for
it's
me.
all based on what you need to improve.
Okay. Any other, before we move on?
One
Ms.
thing
Hamilton?
too, when you're talking about availability, that he came early, a good person will seek another job very promptly, and that could have been part of the reason for the availability and going early with it, because maybe he could have moved on to another job. So if he felt like he was highly qualified to take on a position, he may have thought, I better grab him before somebody else does. That's just a thought.
So
That's a
you,
thought.
yeah, I know, and you went into another, I didn't need to go into Mr. Steele's too much, but you made a case there, or a point. The following week, on a Tuesday, 1 week after he's been here, you know, he went back to Miami, we all know, to do a deposition, and he was in a news clip, you know, at the council meeting, discussing the reason for his leaving. So, you know, that, we don't need to get too far down that hole. We talk about, he obviously didn't have his affairs wrapped up there. He had to obviously go back, so if we're gonna talk about that, you know, there we go. Why the rush to get him here on the 24th? You know, so, not to go too far down that.
He transferred from one job to the next. I personally think 5 weeks was maybe a lot, but I also look at the week before that, myself and the city administrator met with the city administrator of Bay County and a couple of their directors. And during that conversation, I asked, is it possible if we hire somebody they could spend some time in Bay County? And they said, yeah. I saw that as an opportunity. So if he came, whether it's 5 weeks or 4 weeks or 3 weeks, normally 2 weeks is pretty normal for a transition. So there's an extra 3 weeks here. But we sent him to Bay County, we didn't bring him in here. And we tried to get some training out of them. I thought it was a good opportunity. That was Chris's decision to do, but I questioned Bay County, would they be open to it?
And have we seen him, has he been to Bay County?
Pardon me?
Has he been to Bay County?
Yes,
He has?
yes.
Can you furnish me the dates?
We're really nitpicking.
I'm not nitpicking, I mean, I'm down here every day, Richard.
I know, my thing about nitpicking, I'm saying that Tammy took a day off the other day.
Yes, you did.
Did she get paid for that day?
I hope so.
We're not questioning it though. Nobody at this table's questioning it.
But if,
That's all an operation. We're nitpicking whether he went to go see his wife's surgery or whatever. I mean, we can find an excuse if we want to get rid of this guy. Let's make a motion and vote on it.
Well, let's keep
This is-
discussing the items. I mean, the items need to come out at this table so everybody can discuss it here. This is the place we discuss stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, the only thing I want to say about the public works hiring process, he has the ability to hire and fire. He requested, and I suggested also, that he talk to all the council people about it, since he was new. And I believe he did that. What question?
Did he tell me his plan, Mr. Wolf?
What-
He told me, hey, this is his plan.
Can I keep going?
Yes, sir.
I'll let you. What questions we ask as a council when we're being told something drives that conversation. If we're just there to listen and leave, then that's what you get out of the conversation. If you ask questions, you're gonna get some answers. And I believe there are a lot of questions that were not asked that are being asked now.
Well, that's, like I said, we've confirmed, and I'll sit here at this table, that from what I've read, that he had the ability, and I've told him that, to hire for that job. Whether it's, looks good or looks bad, what he did, you know. I'm not disagreeing. We started with, the process was when he passed and everything else. So Is there any more discussion on that issue?
I have a concern, maybe a little bit different, but I know when Jerry talks about people meeting at the house, has there been any, well, you said something about people come to the house.
My house,
Your house, your
my
house.
house.
Has there been at any point that people have come to your house on this city council to discuss these matters?
On the city council?
Anybody in this table come to your house, anybody at this table
No.
come to your house to discuss the issues of concern today?
No.
Can you honestly say that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I surely can.
all right, because,
Okay,
just a question, you answered.
And I answered.
what's your next? item?
Well, obviously, we had the on-premise lodging arrangements that we've discussed. It was just a very poor decision to allow that. I guess I could have to use under the impression that somebody else stayed there too. That was sent on a Sunday, we received an email saying that that didn't happen, that the other guy, so I've never, I think he was probably there, but who knows, regardless. So we had that, and he was reprimanded for that particular item, but what concerns me when Mr. Truitt comes into it is when he sends me an email, you know, obviously he said he gave him the green light to bunk, but when he sends the email, when I moved here from South Florida, I had the benefit of a $6K in moving expense. When Mike moved here, he had the benefit of already having a place in Appalachia. If the council would prefer, I certainly can give Mark a moving expense stipend to help him get a place sooner. This arrangement was done at a cost-saving measure. We're essentially paying 2 director salaries for the month. And I asked Mr. Truitt, we were still, and I go in there, I haven't been in there, I was out of town last week, but I asked him when we sat down, and I said, what? That is something we've never, the only person we've ever allowed money to moving expenses for, as I know, is the CA. So the way the email is written, it's almost like it was already done. He had already allowed it. So it was already a mistake, bad judgment on his part. But to say, hey, if we can give him, if y'all want to give him one, I mean, I'm like, what? It's almost like it's just capital. I'm just going to do what I want. That's where I'm getting at. I'm getting that it's like I'm just going to do these things, and a lot of times we get, well, you know, I've been getting a lot of, just like the chaplain supposedly staying there. Well, now it just didn't happen. I'm like, okay. So anyway, so that's one of my items.
Okay, his judgment in letting him stay over was obviously agreed by the council here, and we did reprimand him for that, with a letter of reprimand. His judgment to reply to you and tell you that we could fix this by giving him a Skype, you know, a living expense or whatever. I don't know if that was a suggestion, I don't know if that was asking a question.
I'll own
That's
up to that one.
something that would have
I'll
to,
tell you about that.
that would be something that have to come to the table. If it was suggested by somebody and wanted that question answered by the council, it should have came to the council, but I don't think it was. It was just suggested.
So let me answer that, because I did see that email about when I was gone, and I emailed Chris back and said, maybe we can get the council to agree to some kind of stipend. I know it's too late, and just do a public information request, you'll probably see that email. I suggested it.
And I understand it's the way, when I read that, is it was presented to us like, well, but that also goes back to the gentleman, Mr. Steele, had a job. He was the police chief. We know as of Friday he was still there, and Monday he took a job here, making $80,000 a year, 78, whatever that number is. To make the decision, it was always set, you know, why couldn't why did that even have to be talked about? I mean, I felt, why can't he get a hotel room or something, you know?
And
I asked Mr. Truitt that, I was like,
So I would agree with you on that, Jason. But what I have been told by Chris was his wife still had a contract there, they were still having to pay for housing there. And I think Chris was trying to do a compassionate thing to help him financially. It was a mistake, it was a mistake to put him here. And I'm not trying to justify him staying here, I get what he did. And I'm the one, when he told me he didn't have the money, that maybe we could get the city to help with a moving expense stipend. And so
we never did that.
no, that never came up, but.
Yeah, and I apologize, it's probably not a good idea since we'd already hired him, but I also understood, I think, this financial situation he was in, having a home, a wife that's still in Miami, and then getting up here quickly, whether that was his own decision or Chris's, I don't know, but it probably put a financial hardship on him, and it was handled incorrectly. Just like the chaplain, whether the chaplain actually stayed here or not, Chris gave him permission to, so he was wrong. So I think that was probably a miscommunication when he's been accused of lying about that, when he said he stayed here and then later changed that to didn't stay here, is where I see that as him thinking he's correcting the statement he made. So I don't see that as a lie. You might see it otherwise. What I do see is he gave him permission, so that was wrong, that he gave permission to stay here, especially since he wasn't an employee and some of the issues that could have occurred because of that.
My little comment on that is if you look at the city council meeting, you were here. And I went in there 2 days and asked him 2 questions before the meeting. One of them was Mr. Steele staying here? And the other question was the priest staying here? And he told me yes. Then at the city council meeting, he told me no. And I asked him, did you tell me any lie? He said yes.
Okay.
Look at the meeting. And then you say you don't believe us, they lie. I don't know, I don't understand how you get that point.
Because Jerry, I didn't hear him tell you he lied, and I wasn't here. And when I heard he told you he did stay here and then he later corrected it, I didn't see that as a lie. I saw that as he was just correcting what he had told you the first time, and that actually he wasn't lying. He told you the truth, if that's the case.
Of what he knew.
Yeah, of what he knew. So I just think it was poor communication and miscommunication. I know how you feel, and I acknowledge that.
I heard the same thing at the meeting. I mean, he did say that, but
And you don't think he lied either, Richard?
I believe that when he gave you the information, he only had limited information, and he answered it based on limited information. When he dug into it a little bit deeper, that's when he found that it wasn't the right answer. Should he have called you up and told you? We probably forgot about it once she was asked. I don't know.
Is there anything else on that one? And then we kind of went right out of that particular item into the next one involving, and I brought it up at the 3/11 meeting. I was contacted on 3/7 by the lieutenant, and I was in City Hall, and he said, "Could I talk to you?" He's trying to talk to all the council members, and I went in his office, talked to Marty, Lieutenant, and he informed me, he said, you know, the sheriff's, he said, are we doing our job? He started out, I said, no problem, I don't have any problems with it. And he said, well, the sheriff was informed that Mr. Steele had contacted FDLE about reinstating the police department. And I brought that up at the meeting. And Mr. Steele was behind me and Mr. Truitt was in his chair, and Mr. Steele said, no, that's not the way that it happened. I was calling about my credentials. And I want to add, you know, before I bring something to this table, I really, especially about somebody's employment, I really want to connect the dots as much as I can. So, before I brought it up at the meeting, I had asked the lieutenant again. I was like, are you sure that this is, you know, that's the way it went down? So Mr. Steele said no. I called about that. Mr. Truitt shook his head no. He didn't. That's not the way it went down. We had a discussion at that meeting. Y'all can all go back and look at the meeting. And somebody has the right to say, that ain't the way it went down. So that was on 3/7. 3/11 is when I brought it up at the meeting, and it was denied. And that's the same meeting Chris was given the reprimand about the lodging. So that's kind of still evolved a little bit more. I didn't think it was just going to die down when you call somebody or tell somebody that they've basically said something that is not true, which at that meeting was pretty much what was said, that that's not the way it went down. Didn't call him a liar and said, oh, it's a miscommunication. So, and I add, during that time when I spoke with Marty at the first trip, I do want to bring this up in the first meeting in his office. I said, surely Mr. Steele would not have just called FDLE the second day he was here and inquire about this. And I said, have you talked to Chris? And he said, yes, I have talked to Mr. Truitt about it and Chris, and you know, he was told at that time that it was not it was a misunderstanding. So anyway, fast forward on that same issue, it still keeps, Marty, the lieutenant, I believe he's given me a copy of the said email. You know, from his email, this is from the FDLE guy. You know, also got a call from a guy moving up from Miami who said he wanted to reactivate the Mexico Beach PD and who will be the new chief. I recommended him. He talks to some of you who are chiefs who are close to him, see how things are going in the area. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Why I'm bringing this up, Mr. Steele, he obviously made the call. He had to have direction from somebody.
Why did he make a call?
Why? He made the call. Obviously, he says about reactivating the police department and to discuss his
You're going based
credentials.
Yeah. So this is obviously back and forth between, because I wasn't on the phone, you weren't on the phone. There were two guys on the phone. One guy from Bay County and then Mark. They were both on the phone. Why did Mark call there? Mark called because he wanted to see about his certification, if he had to drop it, keep it active. Ask him.
I was told that very same thing.
That's what I was told the conversation was about. And I was told that by Sheriff Ford. Probably minutes after he got the phone call that this guy called Sheriff Ford. Sheriff Ford picked up the phone, called me. I answered the question of reactivating the police department in Mexico Beach. Absolutely not. Don't know where you heard that, but I'll put it to bed as soon as you tell me where we're at. He said, well, you have a guy there, Mark Steele? I said, yeah. I told Chris and told him to call him in there immediately and take care of it.
And you said that in the meeting?
Yes, sir.
on the, I get that.
So that was a conversation.
So we know the
But-
call was made. It was somebody, because obviously Mr. Ford would not have called you and said, what are we doing?
Right.
You know,
Yeah, the call was definitely made, there's no doubt. But he was asking, but from what I understand, he was asking about his certification, carrying it over, not having to lose it.
So have you talked to Mark Steele about this?
no, I have not.
So what are you basing this on? This memo?
The
Conversation
lieutenant
with
memo.
Marty?
Yeah, the lieutenant and this member.
So I've talked to Marty about this, and I have serious doubts about this whole affair. I talked to Mark Steele personally about it, and he assured me that he was only checking on his ORI status. I told him and Chris if they were looking into restarting the police department, just checking before they talk to somebody to own it, let me know up front, you know. But if they lied to me, then there was no getting past that. Mark assured me that it was miscommunication, misunderstanding. Okay, so I'll take him at his word. Did Chris know about this? That's what's being implied, that this is a conspiracy. And so we're associating what may or may not have happened with Mark Steele and FDLE phone call, that that Chris is guilty of something. And I don't have any reason to doubt what Chris told me, that no, that wasn't the case. I'm undecided about the conversation between Mark and FDLE. I don't know. I do know from the lieutenant, I believe what he told me was Sheriff Ford took them at their word when they talked, because they did talk to the lieutenant and Sheriff Ford, and he's taken them at their word, and he's willing to move on. It's another example or potential issue I know you're bringing up. I choose to believe Chris, that he didn't do this or didn't instigate this. I'm undecided about Mark and if there was confusion or I actually asked that. I don't know.
My question is, mine's simple. The man from FDLE would have sent this if it wasn't true? I mean, he just come in one morning and said, let me just write this piece of paper down here and send it. So you took Mark Steele, you said you talked to Mark Steele.
I did.
Did you talk to the man from FDLE?
I have not.
Have you talked to Sheriff Tommy Ford?
I have not. I talked to
So
the
you talked to Mr. Steele, and to me, just to me, I mean, this is hard not to believe here. This is really hard. This man just come in and write this piece of paper and send it out to us. This is not true.
And Jerry, that's why I said I'm undecided. I don't know. I talked to the lieutenant, who's also doubtful that this is true. He thinks this is true. And so what my point is, let's just say Mr. Steele did this. Is Chris Truitt guilty of something because of that? Are you saying he instigated this, or he knew that was the conversation? I don't think so. But
He's his employer, and we brought him up here, and the man has, and I know, maybe I see you in a court of law, you're saying, can you concrete, evidence? I mean, his background is in police, we put it all together.
Chris either has to have responsibility over Mark or not, so he does.
I mean,
It does.
And so, yes, is he responsible for his actions? Yes. Do I think he instigated this? I don't know. And like, this isn't a court of law. If we were to get a statement from this gentleman, if you want, I don't know if we could even do that. I don't know what the truth is, but
I don't think it's a far-fetched outlook to think that maybe between a conversation for two people, I can see myself being on the phone and the guy calling me and saying, hey, I'm coming up from Biscayne, I'm the police chief. From Biscayne, I'm coming up to Mexico Beach. the conversation, that guy's mind probably went 150 miles an hour right after he said that. Okay, and then everything after that was, from what Mark says, can I get certification? But this guy heard the police chiefs coming up from Biscayne, and I believe maybe there was some, I don't wanna say fabricated, but I think that maybe he assumed something that maybe was not.
And,
Or Mark said what he said. Either
yeah,
way.
I know.
But I could see that conversation going south.
And, you know, I brought up these instances and it's nothing personal. We're here to oversee the city of Mexico Beach's, you know, we're here, us five, we're the last. And there's been a lot of questionable things that have, you know, transpired, in this few short months, these 4 months that he's been here. So, you know, like I said, I guess I'm at the point where there is some trust issues, you know, with the current administrator, with me. You know, he's made bad decisions, he's, you know, seems to wanna shift every time that something comes up, the blame seems to be shifted. It's just very concerning that we're here in at this point of the road. And we are dealing with just a contractual employee that's the city administrator. And I mean, do we wanna, that's why I wanted us to talk about it. I've heard several of y'all saying that you think that he's, you know, that there's reasoning to believe him, I guess, so to speak, you know, like some of these things that maybe they just didn't happen the way they did. It's just, like I said,
I agree with you on some of the judgment. I mean, if he knew that Mark was gonna call there, he might have, better decision might have been, come in my office, we'll call him together, okay?
well, okay, so let me just, since we're talking about the sheriff thing. So I asked Marty that day on that Friday, when he first said this, I was like, no, this can't be. And it kind of just kept coming out. I said, has he talked to the sheriff? Marty said, I said it would be wise for him to call. And then I asked again, I said, has he ever talked to the sheriff since he's been here? And no, he hadn't. That is, I mean, we have a large contract with them. You would have thought by then he would have reached out and talked with the sheriff, but it's not, I guess it's not a reason to fire, but once again, never. And then once this came out, as I came back Friday, Thursday late, and I was in City Hall Friday, I was informed Friday that Thursday he finally had a conversation with the sheriff. And that's just, what, 3 weeks after this really started, you know, this came out, and it's just like, now I'm just deciding to call him, and he's never called before.
I
said,
asked him to call Sheriff Ford. I told him to get Mark in there, Lieutenant in there, and himself, call Sheriff Ford, get the story straight, see what's going on.
well, he was advised to call him before, but I was just saying another thing of he's never even talked to the agency that,
A fact
except
that-
for
yeah.
lieutenant.
A fact that I'm not gonna let go, okay, is that we've had a large turnover of employees, be it
Mhm.
in our staff, okay? We finally have a financial director that's doing his job. We've got a city administrator that's starting to do his job. Trying to find his, really not funny, I mean, because that's a hard job to do. It's not an easy job, it's a daily job, it's a guy that's working his butt off. And he's not gonna make everybody happy. Did he make some bad decisions? There's a possibility. Can we counsel that, and as a council, can we grow on that? Can we make something happen that we have the city administrator we're looking for, or at least a good percentage of the people believe that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, or do we exit off of that and start over again?
And here, it's a big decision, and I've thought long and hard. I don't want to take this lightly. It's actually been wearing on me pretty, pretty at nights, just the whole, what's happened within our city. And obviously y'all are receiving the emails and talk with public. I mean, we were, and we still are, I would hope to say now, that still can keep this thing in the right direction. But do we want to, proceed? I understand the turnover. I do, and it's hard, but I'm just here to talk to you guys, and I'm not trying to convince anybody. This stuff's all happened, and I wouldn't bring it here. In the last 2 meetings that I've talked about it, y'all can go back and listen to the meetings. I don't think I've brought false information to this table. And
You brought a conversation to the table, Jason, and I believe that there's opinions on both sides.
mhm.
I think you heard some of those opinions from some of the council people at the table here.
And both, to me, especially with the letter, we talked to one side of it still, but we didn't talk to the man or the sheriff. We didn't, so we sort of, we one-sided, all of us are.
And on that note, I didn't think, even at the 11th meeting, I don't think parading people up to this podium, I mean, if it has to go that route, and if people want to dig their heels in and we have to, on this particular item, then I guess we will if we want to find out the true answer. But it gets back to, the multiple red flags that have been brought up. I mean, that's all I can tell you. I'm just speaking.
Yep.
Like I say, I'm just one person here.
Are you
I'm
done?
highly concerned, and my trust is, and I've told, just to let y'all know, before all of this, me and Chris, I go in there, I go to City Hall constantly talking about projects with him. And he had, or still has, the support. We were there. And to think that, to not be forthcoming on some items, why? Why did he choose to go that route? Like I said, I've sat in there and talked to him. Whoever's there, I've told him plenty of times I wanted that person to be in that seat way longer than I'm here. And I felt like we gave I said it this way, I mean, I think we gave the golden platter here, man. And I just think we've been misled on a few things, and I'm highly concerned. Do I want to continue to move on, or do we? Now, if a decision is made, obviously, we'll have to move on. Either way, whatever decision's made, we'll move on.
Decisions made at this table, that's where it's made. I mean, that comes.
And this is the only place, I went in, like I said, it needs to be talked about here. This is the only place that could be, I would have, Mr. Linderman was gone, I would have called a special meeting. But I can't. It takes 3 of us, and I can't call you and say, hey, you wanted to get a special meeting?
I think we all understood we didn't want to have a meeting until that was mentioned, until Mr. Lerman got back, or we
Yeah,
wanted to do
I
it as
mentioned-
5 versus 4.
I wouldn't have come back if I'd known that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just think it's outrageous
All right.
for everybody.
You got everything out there?
Can I make a comment? So, there are a couple items that concern me that you mentioned, Jason, and I've thought about this. It's about all I've been focused on since I got back. And I gotta tell you, I've been trying to decide what's the right thing to do for the city itself, the employees, and what's fair to Mr. Truitt. And I think we have 2 choices. We can do the HR investigation and try and move on from that, and counsel Mr. Truitt on the mistakes he's made. And I've talked to him personally about my perceptions of some things and comments I've received from citizens that I think he needs to fix. Not saying he's done anything wrong, immoral, illegal, but I think his approach sometimes isn't taken well on things. And my question is, do we still have enough trust in him that he'll do that? And he'll accept the corrections and recommendations we give, and then can we as a city move on and not have this lingering, festering wound that keeps us from getting anything done? Because this is all I've focused on the last week, and I had plenty of other things I wanted to do. Or do we terminate him because we've lost trust in him and confidence, and then we look for another city administrator? And what do we do in the meantime? Who do we have running, keeping the ship afloat in the meantime? And I don't have any good recommendations on that. So I really don't know which is the better solution. My recommendation is, the first course of action is to try and move on, have Chris make corrections, give him some formal counseling on the issues that we see. Maybe we come together as a group and give him that input, or put it in writing, I don't know. I think we have to be cautious of letting social media judge him, because I've talked to many people in this audience, and there are a lot of assumptions. When I've asked them to give me a fact, in many cases they've told me one or two things, but a lot of it is, well, I heard this from so and so said this, and we have to be cautious of that, I believe. And so my recommendation is, if you want to have a vote, let's have a vote right now.
Well,
I'm in
before we
favor
go
of
there,
moving forward.
And before we go there, let's just, we should hear from everybody at the table.
Yep.
Of what their solution is, but mine is that I honestly believe we have to dig in and give this some time. Are there some things that are questionable? It's two-sided, it's 50-50, it's opinions. So let's notice the things that we do know. We do know that he got off his LinkedIn because he didn't think it was right what was said about the city. I agree with that. He did agree that the guy spent the night. That was done. So we've issued a reprimand for that. I believe as a team, we ought to come up with either restrictions based on his hiring, put restrictions on him, don't let him hire, and we do the hiring. The council, or council approval based on the hiring for a time period, whether it be 3 to 6 months. Probationary period, we may want to just make another probationary period for the young man, for the city administrator, if we have questions. Third is the simplest, obviously. We terminate with no real plan. And again, I just think we haven't talked about any positive things, and there's definitely some positive things that are going on that we're getting through. I'm telling you, it's just amazing to me, and I hate to bring up incidents, but I have to tell you that when I sit in that office and I'm asking 5 people one question and getting 3 different answers based on just development orders or maps or something like that, that's the lack of consistency, the lack of having people in a job that they know what's going on. We have to nail this down. We need to work with our employees to make them better employees. It's the easiest thing is termination. We've all done it. I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to counsel and give instructions and keep an eye on this situation. And I mean keep an eye on the situation so it doesn't go bad on us either. We don't want to get slapped in the face. I don't think termination is the answer.
I just had something to say with Mr. Linderman's conversation, just briefly. You know, the social media thing did not get to me. I mean, I printed off all of these emails that I have, or y'all have on your same email. This is nothing. So, when I discussed this, and I'm glad, like you said, we can't let this thing fester. I know there were some concerns when this thing came to the table today. It needed to come to the table. It needed to, we don't need to let this continue on. We all know that. And that was the reason for me putting this on the agenda.
And Jason, I don't know, hold you, responsible for that. I mean, we knew we had to talk about it, but we are, and this is new land for us.
I know. And I'm just saying, I felt like this was a better environment for us. We don't need, I felt like, and it has been a good discussion at this table. So, you know where I stand. And it's not, do we just take the high road, the easy road? I'm very concerned about the road ahead. And, I mentioned this the other day. I actually mentioned it to Ms. Brunson Friday. People do reconcile relationships and things, or people do work things out. But it's been only 4 months. Because it's gonna take some serious, and I realize I'm here to make decisions for the city and to work with whoever's in the office. I get that. But it will take a lot of time and a lot of things to get the trust back.
Stability is one of the ways to do that. I think our finance director is a perfect example of how he's doing and how he's teaming up with people and getting a job done and hiring people properly and bringing them in. I think we really ought to look at a probationary period. We recognize the fact that maybe there's some judgment calls that are 50-50 calls. Let's go ahead and acknowledge that and put them on probation and move forward.
Well, when I came in here, and obviously I put it on the table, I'm for the termination. So, and if it doesn't, we call the vote, it doesn't go, we'll have to move forward with the next plan.
So you're not willing to work with them at all, it's fire.
There's a lot of,
None, you don't question any of it, it's all truth.
you're, Mayor,
I'm asking.
you don't see any truth in any of the stuff that you've received
Absolutely.
from his email. I'm not talking about outside emails.
Some of it, not all of it, yes. You don't have that same feeling, you're 100% it's all wrong.
We're under contract with this person,
Correct,
and it's an at-will contract.
correct.
I just don't want to move forward with this situation. And I know it's going to cause us, there's still going to be a vote at the table. It may cause us some discontent, is that what I'm looking for? We're going to be without an administrator if we vote on this, or we're going to have Mr. Truitt as the administrator. We'll have to cross that bridge when we cross it. Is there anything from council that, I don't.
Well, he has an employment contract, it does have an at-will provision. You have provided him one written reprimand, although you are using it as a part of the blocks to make your case. But it's a decision for the council. From a legal standpoint, as long as you comply with the termination provision in the contract, which is an at-will provision, then it says you can vote a majority vote and terminate him.
All right, there's a couple things I guess we've discussed. I mean, number one, you don't do anything, you move forward. Number two, you do a probationary period with some restrictions. Or number three, you terminate. That's how I see it. I mean, is there anything else that anybody else wants to say before somebody makes a request a motion?
I just didn't know, Tim, if we need to, because of what we call this meeting for, does that need to be publicly addressed? Because this is what we announced to the public that we were gonna discuss.
Well, the agenda, the written agenda was promulgated, but there is the ability of the council to amend the agenda. Now, you know, by amending it, there are citizens here who have the benefit of that, but by the same token, without it being on the agenda, you know, would there be others here? I don't know.
However that goes, we still have to move forward with the agenda item.
Correct. After this discussion,
Correct.
you still have an agenda item.
So is there a motion to do anything? Or are we just moving on to conversation?
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to terminate the city administrator's contract effective immediately.
I second.
Amy, take the roll, please.
Mr. Linderman,
No.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton,
No,
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Wolf.
No. All right.
Well, we'll move forward.
Can I ask for a brief break?
Break? Oh, yeah, okay.
5-minute break?
Take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask you to use a little boy.
I have to leave the video on because the sun's shining off, so.
Okay.
Sunshine.
But that assumes that these are going to leave in case that there probably no requirement.
I do have to go to the sunset. There's no music.
I'll still be sitting.
My wife's having a cold lesson, so
One time I'm in the truck, next time I'm in the brake car.
None of the big, it's only got what's what.
How many, you know, does it have to be in as well, this one's in wide?
None.
Good to have people come
Oh, I agree.
Let me see here, they're all gonna want
I'm always, I'm always.
They're a little clean, just not food.
Good.
Just for, just go.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just, you know.
Life is good.
Mr. Lincoln.
Yeah.
Not fun, but good. Yeah, they're all. It was a good time. Yeah, it's the same as it's I'm out of vodka. I need to get some vodka.
Yeah, I think we might look at, contracting with the county, for example.
I mean, because that way, whenever Rick and go, and the issues right. Oh, I didn't get that, and that's to be honest. just good foundation. Thank you, Tim. I got one more question.
Oh, there's just a short.
So it is?
That's what they told me. As soon as I, which was weeks ago.
I said, I'll be putting this in the middle.
Look at your wallet locker.
Maybe you didn't wear your Mexico Beach shirt today. You came dressed up.
Here,
She does know.
she told me,
Oh, that's what we were waiting on.
She has smoked cigarettes. She can go that 2 hours, that's what.
Did you ever see when Jimmy pulls the hair on me?
I didn't know he had run
So how was the weather on your
We have a place here. We don't do that place. We just do.
So what was your favorite thing to see in Greece?
The best day was probably roads, yeah. Got a wall city.
Did it go dead?
Some nights, little hospitals.
Yeah, I get your, I'm the first one around with y'all.
That's
Well, that one will cost you.
That was no cars.
I gave it out to two.
Carts and
Both players.
Yeah, but so you felt safe.
Oh, yeah. There's always. I thought it was Canadian anyway.
Did I make you mad? Did you reach over on that
I can
side?
see y'all.
Yeah.
Really, man?
You ready, Sam?
Yes.
Smoke your cigarette?
Cannot see her with a cigarette in her mouth.
You won't ever. I promise you.
I'm gonna get her to put one in there, I'm gonna take a picture and send it to y'all.
All right, we're getting, pull our meeting back to order here. On the agenda is a discussion or proposal of the HR firm for investigation of formal complaints. Again, these complaints were given to the city March the 10th. Today is the 24th. It's been 2 weeks, so I think it's time we move on. It took us basically about 11 days to get an additional 2 bids. We got all these in. And we are ready to have any discussion at the table about any of these contracts.
I was wondering, instead of going with one of these contracts, can we possibly use our own city attorney to gather facts and kind of basically get the investigation started to kind of eliminate some of the times that they would have to use?
Well, there's no prohibition against that, but it's probably not something I
You
would
feel like-
prefer, because if there needs to be some action as a result of the investigation, then it would be difficult for me to do the investigation and then have an objective standard on whether or not it should be, what should be done. So I would prefer to have another outside firm.
So another option, what if we did nothing in regards to human resource? If we decided we're just gonna wait it out and see what goes on?
I'm sorry, no,
What if we-
you got the complaint, you've got a
Therefore, we
total
have to go
now
forward.
of 4 complaints. So you have to consider that those complaints need to be investigated. And whether you hire a lawyer to do that, or whether you hire an HR person, that's up to your discretion. But the investigation, in my opinion, should be done.
And we've also gotten emails from citizens, what they thought, you know, I think it's a special group of folks here, that what they thought would be a solution and a resolution and how everything should be handled. I personally, as a city council person, thought that was a form of extortion in this email, because it's basically the force of obtaining something through force or a threat. And I interpreted that email as a threat. I don't know if you got a copy of this email or not.
I get so many emails.
Right.
I got a couple from
Yeah.
you, but
But
I
it
don't
just
remember.
seemed like there's a gathering of folks that said, hey, here's your problem, and I got a solution for you. And, you know, I have a great reputation in the city, therefore I have a solution, and I have an alternative person. So it kind of made me wonder, gee,
Yeah.
was that part of this whole plan anyway? Just
The
thought I'd bring
beauty
that one
is,
up.
they don't have a vote. You have the vote.
This is true, but they have influence in our town, as any citizen does.
Not over the council on that. I did get that email, it was, and it was not a good, you know, it's,
Mhm.
That's what you brought up at last
Yeah.
meeting?
no, that was.
And I greatly
Extension of
respect this citizen, and he does a lot for our city, but I did not appreciate that. It's a form of extortion.
All right, there's obviously a lot of emails and a lot of other stuff that's going on with this whole conversation, this whole investigation, but that's not what we're here to discuss, guys. We need to get a investigation going based on
Can I
what
proceed?
we've
then?
agreed.
I'm
Yes,
ready to start. All right, I think there's some other possibilities, but we need to get going, as the mayor pointed out, and I would recommend we pick one of these agencies. I've taken a look at them, based on their hourly rate, their estimated hours, whether they would have travel involved and the cost of that, whether remote or on-site, the location of the company, I think that might have some bearing in the overall estimate. And having looked at all three, I did a little research on my own. I think MGT, they sound like a good company, but they would do this all remotely. I would prefer to have somebody on site to do the interviews. So that leaves, in my mind, Pittman and Kreisner. Of those two, both are in Tallahassee. I think both would do it in-house, but I think Kreisner does this for a living. When you look at the services they offer, human resources, employment law litigation, affirmative action plans, employee handbooks, climate analysis, HR outsourcing. In my mind, this company does this for a living, and the price between the two, it's hard to tell. Pittman says $250 an hour for an attorney, 85 for a legal assistant. I asked Tammy to ask some additional questions of Kreisner, and you got that email this morning if you had a chance to look at it. They generally charge $300 an hour, I'm told. They're estimating 10 interviews for a flat fee of $5,800. So given what it looks like they do this, that's their expertise, the cost, and that doesn't include travel expenses, so I don't know how we add that into what we decide to go with. But that's my recommendation, and I will add one more thing. Given perceptions, rumors, some things that employees have said directly to me, I would like to include what's called a climate survey or climate analysis, where in addition to this HR investigation, they would give an anonymous survey or let them recommend how to do this to the employees and ask some pointed questions to determine if employees feel like there's coercion in the work environment, if there's racial bias, if there's any other concerns they have. Because I personally think, since we're doing this, we need to go the whole Monty and figure out if this, is it just 2 employees, or is there more going on here? And I think personally think there's more going on we need to look at. The cost of that was estimated to start at about $3,500. So I think we'd have to talk to them. I don't know how we would vote on a dollar amount to go forward with that company, but that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that we'd probably have to come up with not a budgeted number, but at least a number. If we know that it's 58 to do 10 people, we probably might double that and say that it's gonna be 12 or 15. We're probably gonna have to pick a number to kind of estimate where we're at. I did the same thing as you, Tim. I added who's an HR company. Obviously, the MGT was a HR company, been in business for over 50 years. The Kreisner Company, been in business for 25 years. They're an HR company. The Pippin Group, I didn't see them having an expertise in the area of HR. They're more elected law, civil law, administrative law, group law. It didn't have a lot to do with HR. So I graded them in all the other areas, being local, being able to be on site, and I crossed them off and said, no, that's probably not the best. Really choose between the two. So I go to MGT. Their cost was a little bit higher. They're out of Illinois versus Tallahassee, 2 hours away. Everything we've done on Zoom versus local. That was the thing I had against them was being in Illinois and also not being able to do it person to person. Kreisner Group fit pretty everything. They were an HR company. The pricing was good. They're in Tallahassee, 2 hours away. They agreed to do on-site interviews, and they've worked in all the sectors of business that they need to, that we would fit in. So that would be my vote.
On the Kreisner Group, when they're saying approximately 10 individuals for the interview, who chose those 10 people?
We didn't choose any people, we just came up with a number. Tammy and I sat down together and we put a couple of them with names, and then figured want the council. We had some numbers there, and that was it.
I do like the, I'm sorry, just, at least they were a flat fee cost on this. I know that this was at the last meeting, and then we got on at least we know where we're going with these. The mayor's elaborated, or not the mayor, Tim, sorry, you know, going deeper, which agreeance, but we do have to address to get somebody on these two. So whether we agree to come up with some additional funding to go ahead and say, or do we make a vote on just hiring somebody now for these two and then bring it to a meeting to, if we wanna, like, to come up with a number? I don't wanna get too skewed off yet of, cause we punted this last week, and, you know, we need to make a decision on these current complaints and get them addressed.
Yeah, we know we have like $6,000 in costs just to do the interviews.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And reports. So I think even if you doubled that would not be enough, to tell you the truth. I'm thinking somewhere between 15 and 18, somewhere in there, probably where we're gonna land.
Can I, clarification?
Go ahead.
I think that flat fee does not include travel.
It does not, you have to, they all needed mileage and travel,
Well,
but
what I'm pointing out is, we'll have to identify some initial number, I think, for that also.
for the travel and the food.
Oh, we're taking out of legal fees. There's about 150 in there. There's about 50 in there and some other category that could be used also.
Does our insurance cover any of this?
Not so far. So we're asking that question, getting into it.
Mine was, I looked at the $5,800 on the prisoner group right here, was the 10, and the Pittman, I didn't look at the other one, they was in Illinois, they probably good, but he's, they 22 minimum, which would be $5,500. And then the Pittman is $250 an hour, and the other one's $300. So it's really a matter of which one. So for me, I look, I mean, the Pittman group is a little cheaper if you go in that route, but I think but then again, my question that I got, if this is just an HR for people, what if it gets deeper than that? Are we gonna have to, what if we need a lawyer? Do we have to, that's another process, or do we just go with a law group, maybe instead of just perform?
Well, my answer to that is that we're only doing an investigation of an HR complaint. So that's where we stay. This is not a legal issue right now.
That's why I was responded to Ms. Hamilton the way I did. If you need a lawyer, as long as I'm still your lawyer, I would think I would be it.
So, I mean, obviously the only question is we need to come up with a little cushion for the mileage and the meals and the lodging. It sounded like, you know, I don't know if anybody's asked them how many trips they have to make initially, you know, just to get the initial investigation done. You know, we just need to come up with that number so we can move on. I mean, and if everybody's on board with the Kreisner group, what should we, you put some numbers together?
Yeah, I would suggest we put a number of $15,000 down, and then we gauge it from there, and we watch what's happening from there. And if it starts to go above that, I mean, we can have that conversation with the Scrivener group and tell them, if you see a targeted going over those numbers, we need to have some more discussion at the table.
So I agree with you, Rich, but I would want to authorize up to 20, I think, ahead of time, so we're not having to call a special meeting in the middle of this. I think that should cover it between council meetings.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that number too.
Ms. Hamilton?
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a lot, you know, in the long run, I think it will be, to get us started, I think that's a good figure.
I just think a little more, just so we don't have to
Yeah, revisit.
meet again, special meeting, because I love you guys, but
Yeah.
So, last question I would have, when, so if we're, obviously looks like we're headed to hiring this firm, when can they be here? Is
The
anybody?
last time we talked to them was on a Thursday, and they were willing to be there the following week, which would have been last week. So I think if we have a conversation with them this week, we could easily get them in the
Next.
following week, maybe even the latter part of this week.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think to your point, Jason, get focusing on this. In the meantime, if we could have a conversation, a little more detail about what an employee survey would consist of and what the cost would be. They're probably gonna want information like number of employees, some other things. So we're not authorizing that today. I just recommend we ask them to look at it and give us a better estimate.
Yeah, by your email, the response that they sent back that Tammy forwarded to us, it seemed like they were willing to put a package
Yeah,
together.
but let's, they probably need a little more information, and let's get more information out of them so we can choose what we want specifically. Because I don't know what that means when they say that.
All right, based on a conversation at the table, if everybody's had their opinion in, do we have a motion to move forward with one of these companies?
Yeah, I motion we contract with the Krisner Group for the HR evaluation of the current 2 complaints. Four, okay. Four, and authorize up to $20,000.
I'll second it.
Tammy, roll please.
Okay. Mr. Linderman,
Yes?
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Wolf.
Yes. We've done, we have motion or adjourn?
May I make a statement before you adjourn?
Oh, 2 seconds there.
Can we work with a 4R? Or is
Yeah,
that not allowed?
Did you sent me I just have to verify this.
I
I was,
only knew of
I
2.
only know, you sent me 2 complaints.
I didn't have a phone.
So, do we have 4 complaints?
Let me, can I answer that?
I'm sorry.
Not answer it, just, I can tell you, the 2 complaints that come to the council
Yes.
were the 2 that are against the city administrator.
Okay.
If an employee has a complaint, they complain to the city clerk, and that's handled by the city manager. If it's related to this, then we pull them in there, but we don't know if it's related to this yet.
Okay.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I was just afraid of this something.
Yeah, there's two other complaints that are to the city administrator, not about the city administrator.
Okay. Now we're good.
And those are handled by the city administrator and the clerk.
Okay.
The only reason this one is with us is because becomes the council, because it's about the city.
Okay.
But if they're intertwined, Mayor,
Then those join
then
in,
those other
absolutely.
2 could potentially also be investigated.
Correct.
That's why I didn't want to suggest a limitation on numbers.
Yep, okay.
Good.
Well,
Are we good? And
Yes.
I want to just, Ms. Bobby, you can come on up, please.
Okay, Biopilot 215 Kimco. I'm speaking of past experience. What y'all just done on the complaint is good. It was on the agenda. The motion to communicate with the council, that was all good. The vote on whether to fire them or not was not good. You need to have a 24-hour notice, and it needs to be on the agenda for a vote to be true. And that's from all my 8 years' experience.
Okay, we'll get into that.
You need to check it out.
Will do. Anything else at the table? Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.